Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane, your weekly NASCAR handicapping show. This is Wednesday, May 27th, 2 p.m. Eastern. We are live on YouTube, WagerTalk TV, Sports Memo TV, and I've got my two NASCAR experts with me, as I do each and every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Andy Lang, Rocky Atkinson. Going to bring them in just a second. First, I want to let you all know we will have a bonus show once again this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern as well. We've got double racing again this week, guys, back to back to back to back. 2 last week at Darlington, 2 this week at Charlotte. And it looks like it's going to rain tonight at Charlotte, so we might very well be racing on Thursday, not even afternoon, maybe evening, maybe even Friday. Now, look, guys, last week I said there was a 90% chance Darlington would be rained out on Wednesday night. That 10% chance that it didn't happen happened, but it was rain shortened, which is something I also mentioned. So keep that in mind for the Charlotte race tonight. But it's more of a steady rain in Charlotte really all day, about 70-75% from what I've seen all the way through midnight. So not sure they're going to get this one in, but we're going to handicap it anyway because they will race it, if not today, tomorrow on Thursday. And then once again, we'll be back on Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern here on the same channel to handicap Bristol, a half-miler, one of my favorite tracks for Sunday. And then after that will be Wednesday only, except for one other time in a couple weeks. There's another Wednesday-Sunday doubleheader, so we'll let you know about that. But Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, live right now. We'll be back on Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern for a bonus show. Also, be sure to go to sportsmemo.com for Rocky's picks, wagertalk.com for Andy's picks. Rocky, I'm going to bring you in first here. Let's have a quick recap for Charlotte, and then we'll handicap Charlotte because they're at the same track again tonight / tomorrow, whenever they get this race in. But Rocky, crazy race, the 600. It was the longest race in the history of NASCAR because it went to overtime. 602 laps, 603 miles, 402 laps. What were some of your takeaways on Sunday from that epic Coca-Cola 600?
Well, the overtime got me, actually. I had a 4% play on Kurt Busch, plus 125 over Ryan Blaney. I released before qualifying. Busch got on the pole. Blaney was back in 20-something spot. It was looking good. Kurt dominated at the beginning. He led all the laps up until the red flag. They had a red flag. I think it was an hour and 8-minute delay. Then Blaney had his number for a while. Kurt went a lap down as he had to make an unscheduled pit stop due to a loose wheel. He got the lucky dog pass to get back on the lead lap. At the end, he was back ahead of Blaney, but then William Byron spun out and causing the caution with, I think, maybe 3 laps left, 4 laps left, something like that. And pit strategy cost us, and Blaney didn't come in for tires. Kurt Busch did, and he couldn't get back to him with only 2 laps left. Chase Elliott, I felt like he ran a good race. His crew chief made a terrible call at the end of the race, bringing him in for overtime while he was leading the race. And Jimmie Johnson ran good, however, was disqualified after the race for being illegal. Denny Hamlin, I want to mention him. He got off to a bad start as a ballast fell off his car before the race even started. So when the race did start, he was sitting on pit road. He went several laps down before he even got out there. He ended up in 29th place. So that's kind of my recap for Charlotte.
It really was a crazy finish. And, yeah, the takeaway, of course, the headline has to be Chase Elliott once again. I don't even want to say finds a way not to win because neither week was it his fault that he didn't win. He was running second, gets clipped from behind at Darlington. And then, of course, this week he's leading with a several-second lead over the second-place car with 2 laps to go. I believe he was about 10 seconds over Keselowski with 2 laps to go, ends up winning the race. And his own teammate, as you mentioned, ends up screwing him with William Byron. And by the way, guys, 600 miles, that was the only 3rd real caution of the race. All the other cautions were competition, rain, and stage finishes. Just remarkable that would happen to Chase Elliott. But my takeaway real quick, and I'll get to you, Andy, was that Hendrick dominated. In fact, with 3 laps to go before Byron had the caution, the 4 Hendrick cars were running top 7. Byron was 7th. Johnson, Elliott, and Bowman all top 7, all 4 of them with 3 laps to go. You know, Gibbs had been the dominant team for many years. They were pretty good once again. But, yeah, Hendrick looks like the team to beat right now. Andy, what were your thoughts on that crazy finish at Charlotte?
No matter how hard you handicap and how smart your picks are, one blown tire with 2 laps to go can shake up the whole field. I thought a surprise. I got to say that the guy that got me into handicapping NASCAR is my wife's dad. And before the race, he called me and he said, "You got to knock it off with the Christopher Bell nonsense." The guy's really good. And I said, all right, I'll keep an eye on him. And I've knocked Christopher Bell. I stand corrected. That is a take that is not aged well. I'm all in on Christopher Bell now. I like him. He's getting the most out of the car. His finish was incredible. It was legit. He was up there all night long. So I'm going to be a Christopher Bell fan from now on. And then Kevin Harvick, he finished sixth, which was the worst and most undeserving sixth place finish of Kevin Harvick's career. He was running. I think he was in his average running position in green laps was 14th. He has a horrible track record at this track. It makes no sense why he does not run good at Charlotte, but it's just been a disappointing run for him. And then I have a suggestion for NASCAR. You have a lot of new viewers. Could you knock it off with the last names that nobody knows who is? If there's one sport where you just put the first name at the ticker, it's NASCAR. Just put Jimmy, Joey, Clint, Denny. It just sounds so NASCAR-y. I kept getting text messages from people that bet on this race asking about which K. Busch was up near the front and which one just had to pit. So NASCAR, if you're out there, just put their first names up. It would be a lot more fun. We all know their first names. It's the only sport that could get away with it.
Yeah, by the way, Andy, I didn't see the viewers for this weekend. It'd be very interesting to look up that data. But last Sunday, that first race back at Darlington, Fox had 12 million viewers. 3.5 million were first-time NASCAR viewers out of that 12 million. So that's almost 30%, which is just incredible. And I'm hoping that translates to maybe some first-time NASCAR bettors. I would think there's even more first-time NASCAR bettors since people were already watching, probably hadn't bet on it before. So, yeah, this is a great time to be watching NASCAR, and I really hope they continue to have some good races. I think the races have been pretty good. They've been quirky, but that sometimes makes for good TV. The 600, as we talked about, can be a brutal race. It's long. It's a little too long, in my opinion, but it still was exciting there at the end. Of course, it went to about 1 a.m. Eastern time, so there again, they probably didn't get the viewership they would have had. This Wednesday night race, once again, we're live at 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It looks like it might be rained out here this evening. Hopefully we'll get in Thursday night. This race is almost half as long as the 600 was, and it's Andy's once again had some say, and he made it a 500-kilometer. We did that just for Andy Lang for his metric love. But, yeah, this once again, second week in a row, we will have a race that's measured in kilometers, equals, once again, 312 miles. So the Coca-Cola Sunday was 600. This is 312. Coca-Cola was 400 laps. This is only 208 laps. The second stage ended at lap 200. The third stage ended at lap 300. So basically, look at the first two stages if you really want to handicap this race. But then again, it gets tricky if it's rain short, and a lot of things we have to dive into for Charlotte on Wednesday. First, so let's get to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, I want to remind all the viewers, WagerTalk TV and Sports Memo TV can watch us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. We will be back this Friday for a bonus show for Bristol at 2 p.m. Eastern this Friday, May 29th. Live and then on YouTube afterwards, as always. Also, we got the chat room up and running right now. Anybody has any questions throughout the show, throw them in there, and we'll get them to our expert handicappers, Rocky Atkinson and Andy Lang. It's your chance to ask myself, Steve Merril, Andy, and Rocky your NASCAR questions and your handicapping questions. Just a great way to pick the minds of some expert handicappers. And by the way, these two guys, of course, last Sunday started 5-1. In Darlington, before we even did a single show, they already had a nice 5-1 cushion for their season record. Andy had a nice winning weekend, going 3-1 overall on the website and with the free pick here on this show. Rocky, just an incredible 61-33, or 63-31, I think, the last 3 years. He's 4-2 this season already. He had that 3-0 sweep to start the season. Once again, Rocky's picks are at sportsmemo.com. Andy's picks are at wagertalk.com. We're going to get to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award for this week. And for those of you who join us for the first time, we implemented this on Friday last week. This is basically a driver that just finds a way to do something crazy or something that does not help the cause. I'll throw out a couple quick ones. I mean, first of all, we have to have Denny Hamlin in the mix. He's one of the pre-race favorites, and he ends up 6 laps down before he gets on the track. Tungsten, had to Google that one. I believe the chemical symbol is W. If you watch these guys, if you watch them pick up what looked like a little piece of styrofoam, and you saw the guy like wince 3 times and have to use 2 hands and drop it, you realize how heavy tungsten is. 2 of those blocks came flying off as Hamlin's going around in the pre-race setup, or the pre-race, the warm-up laps. could do some serious damage. NASCAR not happy. Pit crew, crew chief, engineer, I believe, someone else has been suspended for the next 4 races. That could be a handicapping factor, by the way, guys. But more importantly, Hamlin had no chance from the start. Some sports books still had matchup odds floating at that time. And I'm wondering who got in there and made a couple quick $100 by clicking against Hamlin in the 3 head-to-heads. That was the easiest money you'll find all year, and exactly why some of these sports books pull their odds down a few minutes before the warm-up laps. But tungsten is 10 times heavier than 18-karat gold, 5 times heavier than steel. And that's what was flying around the racetrack pre-race. So Denny Hamlin has to get a mention. And then, of course, I got to throw it out to William Byron also. Didn't cut the tire on purpose, but he's running 7th. Hendrick are all top 4 with 7 top 4, and the top 7 are all 4 Hendrick cars with 3 laps to go. Chase Elliott has an easy win, could basically run out of fuel at that point and still win. And his own teammate cuts a tire. And even then, he could have gotten down to the apron and maybe gotten to pit road. So that's why I'm throwing Byron in the mix as well. So Hamlin and Byron. Rocky, give me a couple names maybe for your Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award nominees.
Well, I've got one, Steve, and it's not really the driver. I'm going with Chase Elliott, the team. I don't think you can blame Chase here, but his crew chief made a terrible call bringing him in with only 2 laps of overtime remaining while sitting in first place. In my opinion, I feel like at least probably the top 4 should have stayed out. That strategy cost him the race.
Yeah, I love that, Rocky. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's something I wanted to bring up on the show, and I actually might have forgotten. I was going crazy at the time when he decided to pit. You know, hindsight is 20/20. We all know that in sports, Monday morning quarterbacks. But I thought there was no way, and I said this out loud at the time, there is no way with 2 laps to go and you're in the lead that you give up the lead in any situation. And obviously, had, you know, the 2 drivers that stayed out, Keselowski and Johnson, they would have done the opposite of what Elliott did. They would have pitted, but they would have started 9th or 10th like Elliott did and have to get all the way up there on 2 laps. Now, I will point out a couple things. First of all, had Elliott not pitted, I think everybody behind him pits probably 2 through 9, 2 through 10. So he would have been a sitting duck. I don't think it would have just been Keselowski and Johnson that had to overtake 8 cars to get up there. And the only other thing you could say about maybe pitting where it would have worked out is had they gotten another caution, which is very likely, and it almost happened. They all got bunched up at the restart. Then Elliott does win that race by pitting because he got up to 3rd place in just 2 laps. I think he would have won the race with another restart. With that said, though, I thought it was the wrong call as well, and that's an excellent nominee because I think it definitely cost them a chance to win and maybe did cost them a win as well. Andy, Ricky Stenhouse Award nominees, what do you got?
I got 2 more. You guys took the obvious ones. I'm always going to come with a few sleepers here. Eric Almirola in qualifying spins on his qualifying lap. It's a 1-lap qualifying, and he manages to not complete 1 qualifying lap. If that doesn't scream Stenhouse, I don't know what does. So then Almirola comes out dead last, and then he hits the tungsten off of Denny Hamlin's car. So before the race even started, he spins in qualifying and then hits tungsten. What were the odds that a driver would hit a piece of tungsten on the track? And then my final one. So during the broadcast, they announced that there's no fans, and then they pan up, and there's a big group of people, and they announced that there's condos on top of the grandstands, and that because people live there, those are residences, and they're allowed to have people over. Who buys a condo on the top of the grandstands at Charlotte Motor Speedway? It's empty most of the year. You park in the big parking lot, you have to take an elevator up, and your view is an empty Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's asinine. It was the most ridiculous thing I saw on the telecast. I couldn't believe it.
So Andy, by the way, what do you think? Andy, what do you think those condos cost? I looked it up yesterday. I will tell you this. They've got them also at Texas and one other track that the same Motor Speedway Corporation owns. Texas, Charlotte, and I forget the 3rd track, guys. It's another super speedway. But they are $600,000 at Charlotte per condo. And they're only $199,000 at Texas. So you could buy 3 of them at Texas Motor Speedway for what you get for 1 at Charlotte. Now, the reason, of course, is because they use them for entertaining, and Charlotte is the home of NASCAR, so a lot of the teams own them. In fact, only a handful of people actually live there full-time from what I read. They're basically luxury suite entertainment suites. But, yeah, I thought that was crazy. I had known nothing about that until pre-race as well. But yeah, Wager Talk and Sports Memo could get one at Texas for 1/3 the price. I think that, and they have 2 races a year at Texas, so you're talking about only about 100,000 per race. I don't know. I'm thinking if enough people go to Wager Talk TV and Sports Memo to watch these videos, and go to WagerTalk.com, SportsMemo.com to buy the picks and make some money. We can all chip in. We'll do a crowdsource funding, and we will own a condo at Texas Motor Speedway, and then we can, parlay that into Charlotte because that's big money apparently.
So who's the winner here of the Stenhouse unforced error? Who do we land on?
Rocky, who would be your pick? Who would be your top 2?
I'd have to go with the Elliott team, but I think Hamlin.
Yeah, I just say, would you take Hamlin or Byron? Okay, because I'm going to go with Hamlin, and Andy, we'll let you be the tiebreaker.
I mean, I'll break the tie, but I just can't imagine if I came home and told my wife I bought a condo on top of Charlotte Motor Speedway. But I'll break the tie and go Denny Hamlin because I did not know tungsten was underneath those cars. I've been following it for a long time. I've never seen tungsten fall off of a car and somebody else run over it. I mean, a true unicorn, one of a kind. We got to give it to Hamlin.
Yeah, and I think it goes in line with the theory behind the Stenhouse Award, because it all started when he made half a lap at Darlington last Sunday and decided to catch on fire. So here, Denny Hamlin made no laps and decided to start the race 6 laps down. I mean, I think that's a very Stenhouse type thing because, William Byron and Chase Elliott, we're talking about the last 2 laps of the race. Stenhouse is never involved in the last 2 laps of the race. So in hindsight, I think we're all probably right. Hamlin is the winner by the definition of the true theory behind the Stenhouse Jr. Award. By the way, guys, group odds out again. Once again this week, Andy, just for you, the sportsbooks have Stenhouse favored in his group over guys like Nemechek, I believe Cole Custer, and I don't think Bell is in that group, but you might be able to get Bell at an underdog against Stenhouse in his own group. And that Custer-Bell matchup is interesting because the sportsbooks keep putting that up every week. It's the most random matchup because you got all the big name drivers, and then I keep seeing Cole Custer and Bell. And I know you've actually been big on Custer because he's from a stronger team, which made a lot of sense. But as you said at the top of the show, Bell looks like he's coming on now, so he is a driver to keep an eye on. And post-race, by the way, he caught me. Actually, during the rain delay, I think, when he was being interviewed, he said that was the best car he's had this year. They had some real speed. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's something I wanted to mention as well. I think Christopher Bell could be an under-the-radar guy to keep an eye on here as the season progresses. First, guys, reminder, you can get Andy Lang's picks at WagerTalk.com. WagerTalk.com for Andy's best bets in NASCAR. Go to SportsMemo.com for Rocky Atkinson's NASCAR best bets. Andy 3-1 last week on the show and the website combined. Rocky 4-2 on the season. These guys went to combine 5-1 to start last Sunday at Darlington. Just a fantastic start out of the gate, and they've won for years. Hopefully we get the race in tonight on Charlotte on Wednesday. If not, get those picks on Thursday. A little extra shelf life and opportunity to make some money. WagerTalk.com for Andy's picks. SportsMemo.com for Rocky's picks. Let's transition from Charlotte into Charlotte, and let's look at the next race. As I mentioned, this is about half the distance of the 600 on Sunday. This is only 312 miles, almost half as many laps. Charlotte's more of an endurance race. Guys that, have long-lasting cars that don't make mistakes are always worth a look. We could have some different drivers in the mix this time, but we also could have the same usual suspects. Rocky, I'll start with you. Give me a driver that you'll definitely be keeping your eye on here in the second Charlotte race on Wednesday/Thursday night when they get it in.
All right, I know I'm going to get the thumbs down from Andy on this one, but I'm going to say Kevin Harvick. He's got 3 wins, 9 top 5 finishes, 18 top 10 finishes in his 37 races here in Charlotte. His average finish, 15.1 at this track. Not one of his better tracks, but over the past 5 races at a super speedway, Harvick has 1 win, 5 top 10 finishes with an average finish of 5.6, which is second best among all active drivers. Harvick's the hottest driver on the circuit. Over the past 3 races, he has 1 win and 3 top 10 finishes with an average finish of 3rd. Over the past 10 races, Harvick has 2 wins and 10 top 10 finishes with an average finish of 4.3. So I'm going to be looking at Kevin Harvick here for this one to run strong.
Yeah, Rocky, it's an interesting pick because Kevin Harvick has been the best driver on intermediate tracks the last 3 years, really for the last decade. He has 6 wins the last 3 years alone. He has the best driver rating on intermediate tracks ahead of anybody, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, Logano, Keselowski, all those guys. Yeah, and he was the best driver at Darlington last Sunday, which is close. It's 1.3 miles. He was decent, I believe, at California earlier this year, the 2-miler. Not as good, I don't think, at Vegas, the other 1.5 mile. But yeah, for some reason, Charlotte has by far been the one intermediate track, the cookie cutter track, where he is not great. And the entire team didn't look very good this past Sunday. Alamola had the qualifying problem, as Andy mentioned. Boyer crashed into the wall, didn't finish the race. But yeah, it's hard to leave him off the card any week, though, just because you feel like he's going to bounce back. And as I mentioned a couple of shows ago with Kyle Busch, I always like to look at Busch off a bad run or a loss because he's so competitive, so good. And you kind of wonder what Kevin Harvick's going to bring to the table here. But yeah, on the surface, this has not been a good track for him. But he makes me a little bit nervous going against him also because he's been the best driver on these intermediates the last few years. Andy, I'll get your quick thoughts on that and also throw a driver at us for the Charlotte 312, the 500K.
Yeah, Brocky and I are gonna disagree, and this is gonna be fun because I'm off of Harvick. The driver with the highest driver rating, which is basically analytics for NASCAR, just takes in green flag runs, finishing, top 15, top 20s. Since the break, the driver with the highest rating is Alex Bowman. Also, Harvick and Truex are the only two drivers to finish in the top 10 in all three races. It was such a lucky sixth-place finish for Harvick. I can't believe he got bailed out by that. And then the last three races at Charlotte, here's a random stat. In the plus-minus with cars passed versus how many cars pass you, the driver who's dead last is Ryan Newman at minus 34.7. So Ryan Newman tends to get passed quite a bit on this track. So I'm going to be looking at the Hendricks cars. Again, they were so strong. If Byron doesn't blow a tire, it's a monster day for Hendricks. I'm not going to bet against Denny Hamlin. The initial, I actually almost thought about betting on him just because you hear about the suspensions on the team and on the surface they sound, really big. But Hamlin is a veteran, and that team has been together for a long time. And sometimes these guys, when they face adversity, they just step their game up to another level. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Hamlin running up front. It's a shorter race, so it doesn't require a ton of long-term planning on your car throughout the track. So I think a nice little contrarian play would be to find a good matchup that you like on Denny Hamlin. He loves this place. Lots of top 10 and top 5 finishes. So I'm going to be interested to see what that 11 car does. Wouldn't surprise me if he's top 7.
Yeah, I like the angle. I mean, it's something I use in all sports. You look in the NBA, for example, when a player's sick. Michael Jordan in the 90s, some of his biggest games were coming off, the flu in the NBA Finals when he had those monster games, or when a coach gets suspended. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and when the thing, too, like in baseball, and I know Rocky probably uses this in baseball and the other sports, especially like NHL, NBA, and MLB, when a coach gets fired, that's always a catalyst. That's why they fire these guys mid-season. And your crew chief is basically the head coach for your team. So, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And that's where Rocky's pick, although I'm not big on Harvick either at this track, it makes me very nervous going against him in any track where he's always capable of running well and then coming off a bad performance. But like you said, Andy, he got a beneficial top 10, so maybe that's enough to make him feel like he had a good run. And the biggest takeaway for me on Harvick is he just wasn't competitive. Hamlin, we don't know because he was so far back from the start, starting 6 laps back before the race even got green. But his teammates were very strong. Truex and Kyle Busch have been the two best drivers on this track the last few years. They both ran well again. By the way, guys, I said this is basically a 2-stage race. It's basically back where stage 2 ended. If you look at those results from the other night, Truex was in first place. Bowman was in second place at the end of stage 2. Kyle Busch third. And Chase Elliott was 5th. William Byron was 4th. I'm looking at the stats here. Jimmie Johnson is not listed. I believe he was top 10 also, and they took him off, of course, because he got disqualified. So once again, those Hendrick cars are very strong. Rocky, give me another pick. I have a feeling you probably have a Hendrick driver that you like.
I do. Chase Elliott. Chase ran good the other night. He has no wins here, though. He has 3 top 5 finishes, 4 top 10 finishes in his 8 career races here in Charlotte. His average finish 14.5 at this track. In the past 3 races here in Charlotte, Elliott has no wins, but he has 2 top 5 finishes and an average finish of 5.7. I felt like Chase should have probably won the race, the last race back on Sunday, and I'm looking for him to run good here again here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I was with Andy when he said Bowman, because I think Bowman's maybe been the fastest driver on the circuit this year. But Chase Elliott probably, especially for someone without a win, has been the best driver overall. And they're both teammates. So, I mean, Hendrick's strong. And just the fact that Jimmie Johnson's been so competitive tells me all I need to know, because he's been a non-factor for several seasons. And now all of a sudden he's a top 10 driver. And William Byron, very inconsistent, and that's where he's going to race like the 600. And they're, again, running 7th with 2 laps to go. And he still finds a way to finish outside the top 15. A shorter race could benefit him as well. So, yeah, I think any Hendrick driver is always worth a look right now. Andy, get me another pick here for the Charlotte 500K.
You want my free pick?
No, give me another a guy you think is a top 3 runner, and then maybe we'll get to a sleeper.
I mean, last race was just a classic Brad Keselowski race. I don't know if they hardly showed him. And, he's like, oh, he's in 12th. And, oh, there's a pit stop. He's up in 10th. And, oh, he passed a couple guys. He's in 8th and 5th. Then 2nd. And then somehow he ninja mind tricks Chase Elliott into pitting. And then all of a sudden he just wins. And even after the race, he's like, oh, yeah, we won. Didn't have the best car out there. He's the only guy that wins without, like, a great car. So a short race. This has got Brad Keselowski taking 2 tires when everyone takes 4, or staying out when everyone pits, and all of a sudden he ends up top 3 with like 10 laps to go. So never count that guy out.
Yeah, and a guy that's interesting for me also is his teammate Joey Logano. Logano was really strong at Vegas earlier this year. He was the best car at Vegas. He won that, led the most laps. That's the only other 1.5 mile track they've been on this year. So it does somewhat translate to Charlotte, obviously. And I thought, Logano maybe would bounce back. He didn't do as much. Keselowski came from the rear, by the way. Don't forget, guys, he got pushed all the way back to the rear for a violation. So he basically had to pass every car on the track to win that race, which is a lot easier to do, obviously, in the longest race of the season than Wednesday/Thursday night's race, which is going to be half the distance. But, yeah, I would not look for Keselowski necessarily to repeat. But Logano and Keselowski have good cars, and they've been very strong. And once again, if rain is a factor, which it definitely will be, whether it'll be a shortening the race factor like it was last Wednesday, we'll find out. It really can throw a wrench into the finishing order, and we don't always get a true finish. And that's what we saw last Wednesday night at Darlington with Hamlin winning. He was not the best car. So it does make this race a little tricky to handicap for that reason. Rocky, give me one more top 3 driver that you're looking at for this week.
You mentioned him. I'm going to have to say Kyle Busch. Busch has 1 win, 14 top 5 finishes, 19 top 10 finishes in his 31 career races here in Charlotte. His average finish is 14.2 at this track. In the past 3 races here in Charlotte, Busch has 1 win and 3 top 5 finishes with an average finish of 2.7. That actually put him ahead of Martin Truex Jr. just by the nose. But I'm going to be looking at Kyle Busch here to run strong here tonight.
Yeah, and Andy, I'm going to get one more pick from you. I'm going to see if you mentioned him or not, but Truex Jr. is another guy we'll definitely talk about. But let me get a pick from you. That might be a guy that's on your radar.
Yeah, I mean, Truex is obvious. We're trying to give out some guys, that aren't super obvious. I have a fun fact about Kyle Busch. When he wrecked Chase Elliott, do you know that was the only mistake of his career? If you ask him, he'll tell you. That was the only time he's messed up, and then he turns around and runs into Bowman at the on the restart and sends Bowman back to 20th. So let's see. Another one. I'm just going to go really weird. I've always been an Eric Jones believer, and he's been just really bad this year. But he's got to turn it around sometime. He's too good. His car is too good. He's going to have that breakout race. I don't know when it's going to be, but there's the possibility on a shorter one, like you mentioned, kilometers and only a couple stages. A lot of randomness can happen. He might be a pretty good long shot. He's just too good to be settling for these, 10th and 8th and 14th place finishes.
Yeah, he actually finished 11th/12th on Sunday. He was 12th until Johnson got DQ'd, but he was top 10 in stage 2. That was his only stage spot where he was top 10, but he finished in the top 7, I believe. So he was competitive at the halfway mark, which is exactly where this race on Wednesday night will be when the checkered flag comes out this time instead of a stage flag. And he is on that Gibbs team, as you mentioned. And Truex and Kyle Busch, as we've touched upon, have been the 2 best drivers the last few years at Charlotte. Denny Hamlin, very strong as well. So he's got the equipment. He's got the talent. Keep in mind, he ran well at Darlington, but going in, he had the best average finish of any active driver going into Darlington. So that was a very good track for him, and he was still, probably not as good as he had been. So he's got to keep an eye on. As I mentioned, Truex Jr., of course, an obvious pick. He's the pre-race favorite in a lot of sports books going into this one, but for good reason. He was second at the end of Stage 1 and Stage 2, and he had the highest driver rating for the entire race despite finishing 6th overall in the final standings. And he has had the worst luck this season. He's been running top 5 in more stages and not even finished top 10 in many races this year. New crew chief, so that's maybe been a little bit of a learning curve. But I think it's hard to say Truex could be a sleeper play-on guy for weeks to come. But the fact that he hasn't had a lot of good finish results, I think he's still flying a bit under the radar. So right now I'd have to say Bowman and Truex Jr. looked like the two strongest cars, at least at the halfway mark for me on Sunday. And I think Bowman and Truex Jr. are definitely worth a look in the second race. Rocky, give me a sleeper pick, a little bit more of a long shot, maybe a guy that's not a top 3, but definitely has some value going into the Charlotte 500K.
Well, I'm gonna come back with Jimmie Johnson again. He was 16-1 last week. He finished second, got disqualified after the race. He on pole for the Coca-Cola 600 this past Sunday. He had a good car all night long. This team will have something to prove here, I think. Johnson's hungry. He's hungry this year. I think he's going to go out with a win at some point. This is one of his better tracks. He's got 8 wins, 16 top 5 finishes, 22 top 10 finishes in his 36 career races here. His average finish is 13 here at this track. One of his better tracks. I believe we're going to see Johnson running near the front here, and don't be surprised if he don't win it.
Yeah, he definitely would have benefited from the 600, though, instead of the 312, because he will be starting dead last, of course, 40th due to the violation. And by the way, we didn't touch upon the qualifying for this race, but it's basically what they did at Darlington. They took the top 20 drivers from Sundays and they inverted them. So, for example, Keselowski, he won the race, and now he's starting 20th. And Alex Bowman, as Andy referenced to, kind of got moved back by Kyle Busch there. It benefited him. He ended up finishing 19th, even though he was a top 5 car basically all night. So Alex Bowman has finished 19th. Will start second, for example, in this one. I believe William Byron is the pole sitter, and he was running 7th when he cut that tire with 3 laps to go, and he finished 20th. So now he's the pole sitter at first. 21 through 40 starts where they finished. So Jimmie Johnson, since he got DQ'd back to 40th the next day, will start 40th, and he's going to have a lot of track to make up. But this is a big track. It's a fast track. You can definitely pass. Might have to use some pit strategy. And then once again, rain is a factor. If you get some quirky stuff with the rain happening, Rocky, there's really a lot of value there, and I like it for that reason. This is as good of a track as any for Jimmie Johnson. As I mentioned earlier, Hendrick has been the team to beat so far this year, and he looks strong again on Sunday. Andy, I'll ask you real quick before I get to your sleeper. What's your takeaway on the Johnson situation? I mean, it was a pretty serious violation, obviously, that they DQ him and put him from second down to 40th and take away all the points. It doesn't sound like it was something that was intentional, but when I first saw the headline, the first thing that came to mind for me was that, wow, no wonder why he's running well all of a sudden after 3 bad years. They're cheating again. They're pulling a little New England Patriots stuff. Andy, what was your thought on that? And I'll get a sleeper from you as well.
I mean, his violation was just something that's in the rule book. Even the head guy for NASCAR sounded a little bummed about it. He's like, yeah, it probably broke during the race. It wasn't anything they did intentional. It's just in the rules. They just went by the rule book. I don't think the team did anything bad on purpose. I don't think NASCAR really enjoyed taking away a second place finish in his last year. I don't think much of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more I looked into it, it's something obviously pre-race he was okay, and I'm not sure they can really make that happen mid-race. The entire the track bar or something just dropped out. So, but it did come to mind though, because Johnson's a team that's been a lot better this year than they've been in recent years. But then again, Hendrick has been dominant this year with speed, and I think that's the main reason. Andy, one thing I did want to ask you though, we didn't get to this earlier. Head-to-head matchups. I believe you had a winner with Johnson over Blaney, if I'm not mistaken. And that still cashes because it didn't come out till the next day on Monday that he was DQ'd. So a really sticky situation for race fans, bettors alike when something like this happens. But you might want to just explain, first of all, you deserve to win that matchup because I don't think it necessarily made a difference and he was the better car. But yeah, just talk a little bit about that. It was kind of crazy how that affected you. It could have affected you.
Okay, so I've had this battle many times with several sports books. So you have to check your sportsbook's rules, especially if you're a new NASCAR bettor. Specifically, the sportsbooks say we use the finish as they cross the line. We do not use official finishes. It's who crosses the line ahead of the other guy. So Johnson crosses the line ahead of Blaney. The books are done. That's how they rule. So Johnson ends up finishing 40th. So if you went to bed and woke up and look at the bet and you see Jimmie Johnson finish 40th, you're going, oh man, we lost, but we actually won that. My first experience with this was in a Formula One race where it went against me, where a guy got penalized after the race was over, and he knew he was going to be penalized after the race was over. So the guy I bet on just snuck behind him and stayed like 5 seconds behind. The race was over. The guy gets penalized 10 seconds, and somehow the guy won the race, and I lost my head-to-head bet. I don't know if I've ever been more upset about that, except when Ricky Stenhouse crashed into Denny Hamlin last year when Denny Hamlin was in the lead and killed a bet for me. But yes, so check your sports book and see how they rules. But every sports book I use, they say how they cross the start-finish line, that's the results.
And once again, it goes without saying, this is why it's impossible to hit 100% winners in any sport. And we all know that. I mean, both Andy and Rocky have a huge edge in NASCAR. Their winning record over the years shows that, but they're not going to win every race. And there's going to be a lot of races they deserve to win that they have a bad luck finish. Just a reminder, though, WagerTalk.com for Andy's picks, SportsMemo.com for Rocky's picks. We got a few minutes left in the show. Andy, let me get a sleeper long shot from you real quickly, and then we'll get you all's free head-to-head matchups before we get out of here.
Okay. I got to say, great conversation in the YouTube chat room. A lot of great NASCAR stuff, a lot of great gambling stuff. A lot of fun. I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick. He's been impressive. Not a fluke at this point. His car is way better than I thought it was going to be. He's been way better. His results have been inside the top 12. I've been very impressed with him. I'm looking at him. You can get plus 500 for a top 5 finish. You get rain or you get something weird. All you got to do is be in the top 10, and anything can happen, as we saw in that restart. So I'll be keeping my eye on Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, in the chat room, as you mentioned, Trent Wade and Kylie Reynolds both referencing Reddick a few minutes ago, and I'm with them. I chimed in actually and said I think he's the likely Rookie of the Year winner. Cole Custer has a chance maybe, but Reddick has been really strong. Keep in mind, back-to-back Xfinity Series championships the last 2 years for Tyler Reddick in that 8 car for Richard Childress. So he's got a machine and he's got some talent. He's a guy I've been looking at for weeks now. We talked about him top 10 at Darlington on Sunday. Didn't run well in that quirky race on Wednesday, but he's a definite guy to keep an eye on. Speaking of matchups, Rocky, give me a free head-to-head matchup for this week's race at Charlotte.
Well, Steve, I know you like both of these guys I'm going to mention, but I like Martin Truex Jr. minus 135 over the 88 of Alex Bowman. Truex has 3 wins, 7 top 5 finishes, 12 top 10 finishes in his 28 races in Charlotte. His average finish is 13.8 at this track. Over the past 3 races in Charlotte, Truex Jr. has 1 win, 2 top 5 finishes, and 3 top 10 finishes. He has an average finish of 3 over the past 3 races heading into tonight. Alex Bowman has no wins, no top 5 finishes, and 2 top 10 finishes in his 8 races here in Charlotte. Bowman has an average finish of 24.4 at this track. We'll play Truex Jr. to finish ahead of Bowman here tonight.
I love Truex Jr. The problem is I love Bowman as well, so I'm conflicted on that one. We'll see how that plays. I think those are the 2 best cars coming into the night, so I love that the odds makers have them head-to-head against each other. They're doing a good job with that matchup, setting that one up. Andy, give me a head-to-head matchup for the Charlotte 500K 312-mile run.
Sometimes you just got to make a strong gut feeling and then back it up with facts. And I'm going to take Alex Bowman over Kevin Harvick. Don't let the final results from the last race fool you. Bowman was ahead of Harvick the whole race. Bowman's average running position for green flag laps was 3.9. Harvick's average running position was 14.1. Harvick doesn't have a good track record at this track recently. Bowman looked great. And what's crazy is now in this short race, Bowman and Byron get not just a little advantage, a huge advantage. They are starting first and second, and they have some not very good cars in between them and the next big group. Bowman and Byron like to get out, and Bowman especially likes to run full speed ahead. So they're going to be out leading, and it's going to take a lot for some of these guys to catch up to them. They're going to have to do some trickery in pit stops, and Harvick is 14 spots back of Bowman on the start. So Harvick is going to have to make up a lot of ground. It's not something he's shown that he can do over long green flag laps. So I'm going to plant my flag with Alex Bowman here. I like what he's shown, and I like him to have a strong finish here over Harvick.
Yeah, and I mean, by the transverse property, I guess we take Truex over Harvick as well, because we've got Truex over Bowman for Rocky's picks and Bowman over Harvick for Andy's picks. Although Rocky's got Harvick as one of his, I don't want to say sleepers, but I guess almost on this track you could say he's a little bit of a sleeper because it hasn't been his best mile and a half, but he's been great everywhere else on the intermediate. So once again, Rocky Atkinson has Martin Truex Jr. over Alex Bowman. Andy Lang has Alex Bowman over Kevin Harvick as their free head-to-head matchups for the race at Charlotte. Wednesday night, maybe rained out to Thursday night. Either way, we will be back on Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, here for the Bristol Handicap. And then next Wednesday, 2 p.m. our normal time back here as well for the following race. Reminder, get Andy Lang's picks at WagerTalk.com, WagerTalk.com, Rocky's picks at SportsMemo.com, SportsMemo.com. Guys, thanks for joining us. Everyone in the chat room, thanks for joining us as well. We will be back this Friday, May 29th, 2 p.m. Eastern live here on this channel. Take care.